Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. Happy Monday, guys. It's a new week, so we're going to be starting a new set today with the V-Booster set 11, which is Storm of the Blue Cavalry. This is one of our future sets that are coming out that features our G clones of Aquaforce, Nubatama, Nova Grappler, and Great Nature. So it offers a new mechanic for Nubatama and some new things for the other clans as well. So today we're going to be talking about the Aquaforce Thavis deck. So Thavis is a G clone of an Aquaforce unit. If you guys were around to play in G format, you would know that. And basically this new deck is focused on what Aquaforce always focuses on, which is having, you know, multiple attacks, but it also has this new thing of focusing on how many units are rested. And basically you have like a rested threshold that you want to reach, which is usually 3, and then you can stride or pseudo superior ride from your deck into Lambros, which is our grade 4 of the deck, and it's Aquaforce's first grade 4 that they're getting in standard. So a pretty cool deck, and it's pretty fun. It's pretty aggressive as well, and it can really put a lot of pressure on your opponent to end the game with its amount of attacks. But let's get right into the video today. If you guys haven't already, be sure to subscribe down below and click the bell button so you don't have to miss any videos going forward. Also, be sure to check out that join button next to the subscribe button if you guys are interested in becoming a member of the channel. Definitely helps out and keeps the channel going. Also, be sure to like the video if you like it, comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the deck, and share the video with your friends if that's something that you think your friends would be interested in as well. Also, be sure to check out my second channel in the description down below, Let's Plays Animes, where I have a channel focused on anime, animation, and video games if you guys like that. But let's get right into the deck here today. So I pretty much took all weekend kind of like heavily playtesting this set, and this set is honestly really fun. If you want to build anything out of this set, this is like one of the first times in a while that I think that every like deck in the set is very fun to play, because I feel like the previous sets haven't really had that. All of the decks haven't been fun to play in my opinion, but that's just me. But yeah, let's get started off with our build today. So we have 3 grade 4s to start off with, which is our grade 4 that we were talking about. So this is 3 Marine General of Heavenly Silk Lambros. So if you guys remember, in G format, this card used to be a Stride, and when it came out, it was absolutely overwhelming and devastating for Aquaforce to have. And it's not like super duper overwhelming in standard, but it is a very good card. And let's talk about its abilities. So the first skill is a continuous ability that happens when Lambros is in your hand. If you have a Vanguard with Thavis in its card name, then this card gets -1 grade. So what this means is that this allows you to, when you're having those Lambros that are sitting in your hand, this allows you to play those Lambros to the board. And since we have 8K boosters and stuff like that, and Lambros is a 15K base, it makes a 23K column automatically, or like a 20K on Accel 2 and a 25 on Accel 1. So it can be very good if you just play down to the board, especially if you don't have units, attacking units that you would want to play down to the board. Lambros kind of helps out with that and fills your spot so that it's not always sitting as a useless grade 4 in your hand. The second ability is when placed, you can choose any number of your rear guards and stand them. So this comes into play when you're using Thavis. So Thavis wants to rest at least 3 units to fulfill the condition to superior ride into Lambros at the beginning of your battle phase. So then when Lambros comes out into the field, it will stand all of your rear guards, and therefore, you know, you don't like minus or you don't like miss out on attacks when Lambros comes out into the board, because it just stands everything. So Thavis rests things to call out Lambros. Lambros restands everything. So then Lambros' last skill is when it attacks and it's on the Vanguard circle, you can counter blast 1 and soul blast 1, choose a column and stand all of your rear guards in that column, and if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, then those rear guards get plus 5,000 power. So I like to attack with my biggest column first, and then I attack with Lambros, restanding my biggest column and making it even bigger, because in this deck we do run front triggers. Now I have seen some builds that run crits, so obviously if you run crits you would want to attack in a different order. I would probably attack with all my rear guards first, and then attack with Lambros and restand a column, but since I'm running front triggers, I think it's more effective in this build if you just attack with a column first, attack with Lambros, restand your column, and then attack and hope to hit front triggers, which will affect all of your lines across the board. So moving on to our grade 3s, we actually just have 1 grade 3 in this deck, and I feel like this is something that Bushiroad is almost trying to do moving forward, because I feel like a lot of decks recently have just been running 4 grade 3s. But this deck is just running 4 grade 3s because Thavis is the only grade 3 that you really want to be on this build, and the whole build is centered around Thavis, so you really just want to find him if you can. I haven't had a problem running him at 4 and finding him in any of the games really that I've been in out of all the playtesting that I've done, so I'm pretty sure that running just 4 grade 3s is fine. But let's talk about Thavis' 2 abilities. So the first one is activation skill that is Vanguard Rearguard once per turn. You can rest the Rearguard and choose up to one of your opponent's Rearguards and retire it. So let's talk about why this ability is super duper duper good. So for one, it's Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, which means that when you have it on the Vanguard Circle, you can also play a Rearguard Thavis, and you can be using, both of the abilities, since they're once per turn but only for themselves. Then you can use their abilities as many times as you have Thavis and get some rear guards off your opponent's board. This can be really good against decks like Luard that have that grade 1 in the back row that allows them to intercept, and just having, a bunch of different players like rear guards that are good for your opponent's defense. If your opponent's running Protect 2, you can snipe those rear guards off. You can pretty much snipe anything off unless that unit cannot be targeted by abilities. So very, very, very good ability. And then obviously, the cost means nothing because you're going to restand all of your rear guards using Lambros. So it's really just a free retire while fulfilling your resting costs. So also, since it says rest a rearguard, if you have a rearguard Thavis, you can choose to rest Thavis itself, so you don't have to rest another rearguard. That's a big plus, because a lot of times if you are fighting control and you don't have a really big board, then just playing down a Thavis and resting itself to retire a rearguard is not, number one, not only taking away from your opponent's rearguard presence on the board, but it's also allowing you to fulfill your rested requirement of having 3 rested cards without committing that much from your hand to the board. So then let's talk about its second ability, which is at the beginning of your battle phase, if 3 or more rearguards are at rest or in the resting position, you can choose to discard a card from your hand. If you do, search your deck for up to 1 grade 4 card, which should clearly be Lambros. And then you search your deck for up to 1 grade 4 card, write it as stand, shuffle your deck, and then that unit gets plus 10,000 power and plus 1 drive until the end of the turn. And at the end of the turn, you can retire that unit, or sorry, you have to retire that unit, and then ride a grade 3 card from your soul as rest. So let's talk about why this ability is so good in comparison to previous Stride-esque skills that we've had. This skill is so good because, number one, you discard a card. So you don't have to discard 2 or anything like that. You discard 1 card, which is instantly made up for the fact that it gets plus 10,000 and a drive to your grade 4, because you're getting triple drive, which is making up for the fact that you discarded a card. So you're not minusing at all. You're also giving yourself just 1 more chance to get into a trigger. And when you're running like a deck with front triggers, like that can be really hard for your opponent to guard, because if your opponent 2 passes your Vanguard and you check a front trigger, you don't have to choose where you want that trigger to go, and you don't have to make that decision of, oh, do I want to put it to my Vanguard and go for another trigger to pass, or do I want to put it to my rear guards and make these attacks bigger and harder to guard. With a front trigger, you're getting, you're knocking off 2 birds with 1 stone. So if your opponent 2 passes you and you check a front trigger, that automatically leaves you up to the choice to check another trigger and bypass their attack if they 2 pass you. Also, if you go Accel 2, which I often do when I'm playing this deck, when you ride Thavis, you will get an Accel 2, and then at the end of the turn, after you go down from Lambros back into Thavis, it will count as a re-ride, and so you'll get another draw 1 off of your Accel 2. So very, 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 very good. Next, let's talk about our grade 2s. So we have 4 Kelpie Rider Dennis. Now I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. I actually don't really like this card, but there is multiple uses to running it. I just don't like it because I'm unlucky. And what I mean by that is that every time that I use the skill, I get a trigger off the top of my deck instead of an actual unit. So maybe you guys will use this unit and get actual units, and that will make this card way better. But another reason that we're running is because Nikki works in conjunction with it for finding a grade 2, so we are kind of forced to use it at 4 in my opinion. But let's talk about Kelpie Rider Dennis's ability. So on the Vanguard or Rearguard circle during your main phase, you can rest another Rearguard, which is also another reason why we run it, because it helps fulfill our rest requirements for Thavis. But you rest another Rearguard, and then you look at the top card of your deck, and you have to call it to Rearguard Circle. And then this ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once per turn. So you can only use 1 Dennis ability a turn, no matter how many Dennises that you have on the board. Also, when you look at that top card, it's the fact that you have to call it to Rearguard Circle that really gets me, because a lot of times I'll check my top card, and it'll be like a heal trigger or a front trigger, something that I wanted to drive check. and then, you know, it just goes to the board, and it like annoys me because it's a trigger out of my deck, and then I really didn't need a trigger to be on my board. But I wish it just said that, you know, you can look at the top card and call up to 1 to Rearguard Circle. That way, if not, you can just leave the top card on the deck. That would make this card infinitely better. However, you do have to call it. I mean, regardless, it is a +1 to your board, unless as long as you're not placing over anything. So, you know, it is what it is. It gets you extra units, and sometimes you need those extra units against control to be able to rest more to fulfill your conditions for Thavis. Next up for our grade 2s, we have 4 Marine General of Head Seas Thanasis. So what Thanasis does is on the Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle during your main phase, once per turn you can rest one of your other rear guards, and then this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So becomes a 14k by itself, and this card actually came out in the previous set. It was kind of useless and you never really wanted to run it, but now that you rest your rear guards and you restand them, so anything that has rest a rear guard on its cost is not really a cost because you're restanding everything with Lambros. So now it just gets a free 5k, which is awesome, and it also helps us fulfill our requirements for Thavis to rest cards. Next, let's talk about my favorite card in this deck, Terrific Coil Dragon. This card is absolutely broken in my opinion and can be used in pretty much any Aquaforce build with no drawbacks. It is pretty much a better version of both Tidal Assault and Algos that we've had from previous sets, and so it is our replacement for them. So let's talk about Terrific Coil Dragon's 2 rearguard abilities. The first one is Auto. Once per turn, when this card stands by a card's ability, you may have this unit get plus 5,000 power until the end of the turn. So you might be like, oh, okay, you know, we restand a lot of times in this deck, so you would rest this unit and restand. You don't even have to do that. This card's second ability will always trigger its first ability, which is on the Rearguard Circle, when this unit attacks, if it is the first battle of the turn, you can Soul Blast 1 and stand this unit. So this unit instantly stands, but it's still attacking until the attack is completed. So basically, when it restands, it will get plus 5k. So it's always attacking for 14k by itself. It's always attacking for 14k by itself. On Accel 2, it's attacking for 19k by itself. And on Accel 1, it's attacking for 24 by itself. So very, very, very good card, and also allows you to attack a whole bunch in a turn if you have this set up with a full board. Then for our last grade 2 in the deck, we run 2 Coral Assault. We just run Coral Assault for some extra advantage and some extra power as well. So let's talk about its 2 abilities. The first one is Continuous ability on the Rearguard Circle. During the battle that this unit attacked, if you have 4 or more other units in rest, this unit gets plus 15,000 power. So you can also use this card in the early game if you want to set up a full board on your grade 2 turn and attack with your Coral Assault last. It will probably get plus 15k. Because since it says units, it also includes your Vanguard. So you really only have to set up 3 other units and Coral Assault for Coral Assault to be the last one to attack and get its plus 15k. Which a lot of times is something that your opponent doesn't guard, so it's a free damage. So it's really cool. Also, at the end of your turn, if the total number of attacks this turn has been 4 or more, then you can put this unit into your soul and draw a card. So it fuels your soul, allows you to draw a card. You can use it on your turn 2 turns when you have Terrific Coil Dragon out and you've used its ability. And since Terrific Coil Dragon Soul Blast 1, you're instantly refilling that cost with Coral Assault going into the soul. And then other than that, you'll be on a Lambros turn where you will multi-attack, and then at the end of the turn, you shove Coral Assault in to draw a card. Then let's move on to our grade 1s. We have 4 Kelpie Rider Nikki. So this used to be our Stride Fighter in the Thavis deck, but it is not anymore. It's not even our top 5 for grade 3 in this deck. It is actually our top 7, and it is just a pure +1 for its first ability. So let's talk about its 2 abilities, because this card is very, very necessary at 4 in this deck, in my opinion, for a lot of reasons, and we're going to talk about why. So on the Vanguard Circle, when it's placed, you can look at the top 7 cards from the top of your deck and reveal up to one who surpasses the Storm Thavis or Kelpie Rider Dennis from among them. Put into your hand and shuffle your deck. So this card allows you to, when you ride it on grade 1, check top 7 for a free Dennis or a free Thavis. Now, a lot of times, since we don't run a lot of grade 3s, we need it to find Thavis. However, if you already have a Thavis, you can get a Dennis, and then if you don't have a grade 2, because that does happen sometimes for some reason, even though we run a lot of grade 2s, there's still a chance that you're not going to have a grade 2. But if you don't have a grade 2, the chances are very high that you have a Kelpie Rider Nikki, and that you're going to find that Dennis in your top 7. So that's why we run Dennis at 4, even though we don't really like this card, because it does work very, very well with Nikki. Also, I would say if you have a Thavis in your hand and a Dennis in your hand, I would just additionally go for another Thavis, because having a second Thavis is a lot more useful than having a second Dennis, in my opinion. Then the second skill of Nikki is when it's on the rearguard circle, you can rest this unit, which again, free cost. Like, you can basically just delete that from your memory and put a normal unit from the drop zone on the bottom of your deck, and then you can soul charge one. So what this helps us do is recycle our Lambros and recycle some of our other pieces on the board. Mainly use it to recycle Lambros, because there are some times where Lambros comes to your hand, Lambros gets damaged and all that, and you only run 3, and so after you use Lambros, it goes to the drop zone. So you definitely want to have ways to use Lambros more than once, you know, a game. And that is Kelpie Rider Nikki. If you've happened to, you know, I had a game where I damage checked 2 Lambros, and then I used the Lambros, and I couldn't find a Nikki, so I couldn't go into Lambros for the rest of the game until I'm able to find a Nikki. So that's why it's just, you know, very important to run 4 of this and have it. If you have one, you know, and you don't need to ride it, you can also just hold back and keep it. So that way you won't be stuck in that position with your Lambros later on. Moving on to our next grade 1 in the deck, we have 4 Blue Wave Soldier Senior Baragios. So Baragios is just an additional way to find our grade 3 since we only run 4. It is just an additional way to find our grade 3 and then also gain some power on the rearguard circle. So let's talk about its abilities. Continuous Vanguard rearguard ability. During your turn, if you have 4 or more rested rearguards, then this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So basically it can become a 13k attacker or booster once you have 4 rested rearguards, and it actually includes itself. So if you're attacking with it or boosting with it and is the 4th card to be rested, then it will go up in power to 13k. Then its second ability is when placed from hand, look at the top 5 cards from your deck and reveal up to 1 grade 3 card from among them. Put it into your hand, shuffle your deck, and if you put a card, discard a card from your hand. So it basically allows you to check top 5 for a grade 3 and discard a card if you find a grade 3, which you will want to use that since you only have 4 grade 3s in your deck. And then your grade 3s that you do have, it won't hurt you to have multiple ones of them down on the board at the same time. So therefore, you would want to discard another card anyways, even if you're just finding your second Thavis or something like that. Next up, for our last 2 grade 1s, we run 2 Kelpie Rider Theodorus and 2 Light Signals Penguin Soldier. So both these cards have synergy with being rested, or they do resting. So basically, Theodorus' ability is very, very good in my opinion. We don't use that many counterblasts in this deck. So, Theodorus, when rested by another card's ability, you can counterblast 1 and choose one of your rearguards, and that unit gets plus 10,000 power. So it works very, very well with Terrific Coil Dragon. Makes it very, very hard for your opponent to deal with that kind of pressure. Because, like, let's say that Terrific Coil Dragon is on an Accel 2 circle. When it attacks because of its own skill, it will already be 19. And then if you use the Theodorus that turn, it will be 29. So not only are you attacking for 29, then attacking for 29 again, you can also choose to restand the column that Terrific Coil is in with Lambros, and then it will be attacking for even bigger. So Theodorus really makes your Terrific Coil Dragons really threatening. And if not, it will change the number on one of your rearguards as well. So you can also just increase your pressure for just a single counterblast, which is very, very good. But we only run 2 because obviously things can get pretty counterblast heavy pretty fast. And then obviously we want to have this card in our back row, resting it. Or we can have this unit in our front row as well. And since we can choose one of our rearguards, it doesn't have to be another rearguard. So you can actually choose Theodorus itself. If you rest this card and it's in the front row, you can get plus 10k to itself so that it's able to hit your opponent if you don't have that many rearguards on the board, or if you don't have a full board. Then lastly, we run 2 Light Signals Penguin Soldier. Light Signals Penguin Soldier has 2 abilities. So the first ability is rest this unit, and one of the same units in your column gets plus 5,000 power. So again, it can rest itself, give 5k to itself if you want to restand it and have it be the attacker. Or if you have it in a column with like Terrific Coil Dragon or something like that, it can give 5k to Terrific Coil, which is taking, you know, an additional 10k shield out of your opponent's hand or more every single turn because of the power that you gave Terrific Coil, and then the Terrific Coil is attacking multiple times. So it's taking additional shield out of your hand or providing you to deal additional damage to your opponent, which is always very strong. Also, its additional rearguard ability is when your other unit attacks, if it is the 4th battle of this turn, so it cannot be 4th or more, be aware of that. So if it is exactly the 4th battle of the turn, then you can retire this unit and countercharge 1. So that's used at your own discrepancy. I don't think I've ever used this card's ability because, like I said, counterblasts are not that heavy in this deck. So I would literally have to have no counterblast, or my opponent would have to be counterblast starving me for some reason, but they usually don't because they're going to have to deal you damage anyways to try to kill you. So unless they're counterblast starving you for some reason, use Light Penguin Soldier. If not, you don't have to. For our grade zeros, we run 1 Kelpie Rider Mitros. This is our starter that does what every other starter in Standard does, which is when rode upon, we may draw a card, and then if our opponent's Vanguard is grade 1 or greater, then we can put a Quick Shield ticket into our hand. So obviously, you have discard costs in this deck with Thavis, pretty much only Thavis. So Thavis, you know, if you haven't used your Quick Shield ticket, by the time you get ready to use Thavis skill to go into Lambros, definitely discard that Quick Shield ticket, or use it for some additional shield if you find that suitable to your needs. Then for our triggers, we run 6 stand, 6 draw, and 4 heal. The reason that we run this trigger lineup is because we run more draws because, like Aquaforce needs, we always need pieces. So if you guys were aware of the regional, the BCS Chicago, where I won with Aquaforce, I was also running 6 front and 6 draw, because you just always in Aquaforce is always about having pieces. They can put out enough aggression on their own as long as they have the pieces to do so. So having 6 draw can really help you against control, really help you find some of the pieces that you need. And then having 6 front, you know, obviously is affecting your whole front row when you check a front trigger, giving your front row plus 10k. So just having those fronts there can be very, very good for you. So we have 2 Dolphin Soldier of High Speed Raids, 2 Enemy Seeking Seagull Soldier, 2 Outright Draco Kid, 4 Emerald Shield Pascal, which is our draw trigger Sentinel. And then we have 1 Loading Bullet Brave Shooter, which is one of our new draw triggers, 1 Peroxine Communication Sea Otter Soldier, and 4 Activate Draco Kid. And the reason that we're running 2 different draw triggers and 3 different front triggers is to confuse our opponent on what our trigger lineup is if our opponent starts counting our triggers. So with that, we're going to move right into the deck portion of the video with our Thavis grade game 1. So with game 1, we're playing against Gear Chronicle. Pretty interesting matchup. They don't really interact in any special way, but the Gear Chronicle player goes first, rides Steam Breath, and then goes for top 5, gets a Chrono Jet, and discards the next stage. So we draw for turn and get Lambros. As you guys can see, we don't have a grade 3 in our hand currently, so we check top 5 with Baragios, and we do get our grade 3 Thavis, and we discard the Quick Shield ticket. And then when we attack with Vanguard, we drive check another Thavis, which is very important because we have an additional rear guard Thavis to use for its ability. So our opponent plays Doodoo, and then plays Doodoo on the rear guard circle and goes for Steam Breath and doesn't get anything, so we know passes Vanguard. And then we take his rear guard, getting a draw trigger, drawing a card. And then we ride Dennis. And then we're thinking about what we want to do here, so we end up calling Nikki. We rest Nikki using Dennis because we wouldn't be able to use Nikki anyways. And then we call a Terrific Coil Dragon off the top. We use Light Penguin Soldier to boost Terrific Coil by 5k. And then we use Terrific Skill to attack for 19. And then it will restand after that. So then we attack for 9 for a 1 to pass to our opponent's Vanguard. We don't get it. And then we attack for 19 again to his Vanguard, which he takes again. So as you guys can see, that was very cool that we got a Terrific Coil off of Dennis just because of how our hand was set up. So that was very, very, very terrific, if you would say. Bad puns, guys. So our opponent rides into Chrono Jet, and he's thinking about how he wants to go about his turn. As we can see here, he has, you know, I guess some decent shield in his hand, but not a whole bunch at the same time. So he uses Chrono Jet to discard his Metallica Phoenix, and I guess he only runs 1 Metallica Phoenix because since we're on grade 2, it's more useful for him to go into Metallica Phoenix than next stage, since he won't get the skill of next stage. But he goes into the next stage and attacks me. He does get a crit, so I get 3 damage to myself. And as you guys can see, we damage check to Lambros here, which is important to keep in mind. I always end up, you know, keeping track of my Lambroses so I can tell when I need to put one back using Nikki. But I ride Thavis and I get Accel 2, draw a card, and then I call a Lambros to the rear guard circle. I use Thavis' skill to rest this and retire his Doodoo. Then I use Nikki to put a card back and soul charge 1. And then I call Thavis, another Thavis. And then I use Thavis' skill to rest itself and retire his Steam Breath Dragon. Then I use Light Signals to get 5k to the Thavis, and Baragios to top 5, and I don't get anything. And then we move into our battle phase. Since we have 4 rested units, which is 3 or more, we can discard 1 and go into Lambros from our deck. He gets plus 10k and an additional drive, and we restand all of our rear guards. So then we go for 25 into our Vanguard first. And then we attack with Lambros, Counterblast 1, and Soul Blast 1 to restand this column, and it gets 5k. So my opponent PGs that. We do get a front trigger, which pretty much seals the deal because it makes all of our attacks too big to kind of guard. So we attack for 30 into our opponent. Our opponent takes it just to see if he'll hit a damage trigger. And then I attack with this column over here. It gets 5, Barragios gets 5k because of the 4 rescue unit requirement. Then we attack for 35, and I guess he figured that if he blocks this, he would still have to, you know, take this. So he wanted to go for a heal trigger there. So as you guys can see, very strong deck. We killed him on the first grade 3 turn, literally, because it is just that strong sometimes if you get the right type of pop-off in this deck. So next up, we're playing against the same Gear Chronicle player. He came back for a rematch, which is totally fine with us. As you guys can see here, we have a pretty decent hand. The only thing that we don't like about this hand is that we have a front trigger in it, but, you know, it is what it is. We can use it as shield, so not a big deal. Our opponent goes first again and goes into Steam Breath and misses. So we go into Nikki, and we check top 7, and we don't get anything, but we do draw off of our starter and get Thavis, so it's fine. So we attack for 8. We just drive check at Theodorus. Then our opponent rides Doodoo and then attacks for 10. We guard that with our front trigger for a no pass. And then we ride into Thanasis. We call Thanasis. And then we call Theodorus. And we call Barragios, checking top 5 for a grade 3. We whiff. And then we attack for 17 into our opponent's Vanguard. Our opponent no guards. We get a draw trigger, drawing a card. And then we attack for 27, dealing him another damage. And he gets a heal trigger, heals back down to 2. So now our opponent rides into Chrono Jet Dragon, uses the skill of Steam Breath to check top 5 for a grade 3. He does get Chrono Jet, adds it to his hand, and then discards it. And then he calls out Ecalbu, uses the skill of Vanguard to discard his next stage, to go into Metallica Phoenix from his deck since we are grade 2. And then he uses a Calbu skill to counterblast 1 and discard a card to have his Vanguard get an additional drive. And then he uses Chrono 2 Tigger skill to counterblast another one, call it out, and draw a card and call it out as rest. So he attacks us for 15 with 4 drive checks. We no guard it. He does get a draw trigger. And then he forgets to draw this card. So basically he does an additional drive check, which ends up being a crit. So I'm basically explaining to him that he did his drive checks and then he drew the card for the draw trigger when he was supposed to do the draw trigger, then draw this card, then check this card, and then check the crit. So then we take 3 damage from the crit. We get a heal on defensive, and we don't heal, but we do take the last rear guard and get a draw, so that's cool. We draw for turn, and we ride Thavis, drawing for Accel 2. And then we rest a card due to Thavis, and then we retire his grade 2. Then we use Thanasis to rest a card. Then we use Theodorus ability to counterblast 1, giving plus 10k to our Thanasis. And then we play out Dennis using Dennis skill to rest this Barragios, and of course, off the top it's a trigger. And then we call Lambros to the board. Then at the beginning of the battle phase, we discard our quick shield ticket to call out a Thavis. And it gets plus 10k and an extra drive. So we attack for 32 to our opponent's Vanguard. Our opponent takes it and does not hit a damage trigger. So then we attack with Vanguard Thavis, counterblast 1, soul blast 1. And our opponent PGs that. So we check 1, 2, 3. We do get a heal trigger on our 3rd check, giving the power to Thavis. So we attack for 14, which he blocks. And then we're deciding which column we want to attack with first here. So we attack with the lowest one, 30. And then we attack for 42, and our opponent takes all of that. And then at the end of the turn, we go back down to Thavis, getting an Accel 2 and drawing another additional card. So our opponent plays Smoke Gear Dragon to start off his turn, and then goes for discarding Steam Maiden Ribble because Smoke Gear Dragon makes it a grade 3 card when he has a Chrono Jet. So he goes into next stage, uses Ribble skill to Soul Blast 1, and call it to Rearguard Circle. And then it gets plus 5,000 power, and then he puts a normal unit from drop zone to the deck, and then he draws a card, and then he calls another Smoke Gear Dragon out. And then because he discarded a card, Steam Breath gets plus 5k this turn. So we do PG the next stage because we won't be able to PG the Chrono Jet that comes after. So he does discard 2 cards, go into Chrono Jet, and then since one of the cards that he discarded was Ribble, he uses the skill Soul Blast 1, call it to rear guard, put a card back to bottom, and draw a card, and he drew another crit, which is actually pretty funny, like now that I'm seeing what his hand is. But I 2 to pass his Vanguard, and he checks a heal trigger, and nothing else, so that attack doesn't pass. And then he attacks us for 28 into our Vanguard, which we decide to block. Like, we basically were thinking if we wanted to block this or block this, and since this is bigger, we definitely want to block this and take this. So then he actually chooses to go with this attack into our rear guard, which means nothing to us. I don't even know why my opponent did that. But, you know, to each their own. We use Dennis's ability to rest Lambros, and of course, off the top, it's a heal trigger, which is unfortunate. All kinds of unfortunate. So we use Thavis' ability to rest Dennis, and we use another Thavis' ability to rest Theodorus, using Theodorus' ability to get plus 10k to Dennis. And then at the beginning of the battle phase, we discard a card to go into Lambros, and then we restand all of our rear guards. We attack with 20 to our opponent's Vanguard. Our opponent blocks that. We attack for 33, Counter Blast 1, Soul Blast 1, and restand, and they both get plus 5k in the column. And then our opponent's thinking about how he wants to go about this. He no guards. I check a front trigger. And so I'm pretty much hoping that he does not check a trigger on defensive, which he ends up checking a trigger on defensive. So we attack him for 23, 27, 34, and then 40 to our opponent's Vanguard. And he blocks all of that. I think we would have been able to force all the cards out of his hand, if not, you know, in the game, if he did not check a damage trigger. But now, I want you guys to view how we put him in an interesting position because of what we did last turn. Last turn, we retired both of his Steam Breaths using our Lambros, so that actually weakens the Gear Chronicle deck significantly because they can't just discard any card. They have to have a grade 3 or discard multiple cards from his hand. So, as you guys can see, he discarded a Doodoo and a Tigger that otherwise could have been used as rear guards or shield value for him. So the Chrono 2 Tigger obviously comes in as rest, so that's not useful to him at all. And then he calls out a Doodoo to the rear guard circle. Skill of Doodoo goes off, giving 5k to the column, since he has discarded a card this turn. And since he went into Force 2, none of his rear guards in the front row are getting power, so this Ribble that he moved up to the front row is only 8k, which makes us very capable of surviving this turn. So we do have to take a small risk here, and I did want to no guard this first attack because I don't want him to hit a crit and spread it, so he doesn't get any triggers in the first attack, and we do check a front trigger as part of our defensive trigger check. So he discards 2, and then he goes into Chrono Jet Dragon. Then he uses Tigger skill to call it out, Counter Blast 1, rest it, and then draws a card. And then he attacks with Chrono Jet Dragon, Counter Blasting 1, so it's 33, no Sentinel. So I guard this for a 2 to pass, which he does not get the 2 to pass off, and then he gets a draw trigger, which he puts to the Doodoo column, and then I'm able to guard that column as well. Then he ends his turn. We go for drawing for turn, and then as you guys can see, I want you guys to notice here, so we have a Lambros here, and we also have 2 Lambros in our drop zone and no Nikki. So this is the situation that I was talking about where you can't Lambros anymore because basically, you know, you don't have a Lambros in your deck. So basically we use Dennis' ability to rest out Theodorus, and then we use this, and actually my opponent alerts us to the fact that Dennis is only once per turn. Even if you have multiple like Dennis, it's a hard once per turn. So basically we just like put that card back, and then we got our heal trigger back out, and then we just continue the turn as usual like I would have anyways. So we rest this card to retire his Doodoo off of Thavis, and then we attack for 20k to his Vanguard, and then he no guards. We get a front trigger and a Nikki, which is like, Nikki, where were you? But he only has 2 PGs in his hand, 2 heals, and 2 10k shields. So even with that front trigger that we checked, he would not have been able to survive. Maybe initially he would have PG'd if he didn't know that we were going to check a front, but he wouldn't have survived anyways because of that front trigger. And that's another example of why front triggers are just so good. Just because, like, even if you can no longer use Lambros in that turn, you can still go into attacking with Thavis and then using, you know, just a regular attack with a full board to try to hope for a front trigger and pressure your opponent out of still losing the game. So I don't know what happened just there, but my area just quit itself. So we're attempting to load back up to go into game 3. So let's try this one more time. So Thavis game 3. There we go. I think I forgot the S. I hate that area quits itself every time there's like the smallest error. But basically we're playing against another Aquaforce deck. So this seems to be a Maelstrom deck. So we go into Barragios, check top 5. We do not get a Thavis, unfortunately. But I mean, we do have a Thavis already in our hand and a grade 2, so we're fine there. Our opponent rides Coral Assault, and we go for the no guard. He checks a heal trigger. We ride into Dennis, and then we call Coral Assault, and we call Thanasis, and we call Light Penguin Soldier, using Dennis skill to rest this, and then we call a heal trigger off the top, as usual, to be expected. So then we attack with this, and then we attack with Coral Assault for 24. Our opponent goes into Blue Storm Dragon Maelstrom, and then calls Terrific Coil, calls Elpida, and then calls Press Stream. So in this set as well, this is a perfect example because this set did give some additional support to Maelstrom. So our opponent attacks our rearguard for 14, attacks our Vanguard for 22 with triple drive. We take it. Then our opponent attacks for 24, uses the skill to restand Maelstrom, and then gets a front trigger and a heal trigger. We take it, and then we take that final attack and we do get a heal. And then we take that attack as well and get a front trigger. So next we use Thavis to retire his Terrific Coil. Then we call out Lambros and call out our own Terrific Coil. So we use the Thanasis skill to rest Theodorus. Using Theodorus, give plus 10k to our Terrific Coil. Then we use Light Penguin Soldier to give Terrific Coil another 5k. So then we go into Lambros with discard 1 and stand our whole board. So we attack for 29 and 37. He takes it, and we attack with Lambros, restanding this column. And it's 30k. So with triple drive, we do get a front trigger and a heal trigger, so that's beautiful. So we attack for 42, 30, and then 57. So puts a lot of pressure on our opponent, and then allows us to draw a card at the end of the turn because of that Accel 2. So our opponent goes into Glory Maelstrom, which is usually would have been really, really hard to block last turn if we did not heal. So our opponent uses Counterblast 1 with Glory Maelstrom to give his front row plus 10k, and we can only guard each one of his attacks with 1 card. So I took this first attack to see if I would hit a damage trigger, and I did not hit a damage trigger. So we PG his Vanguard, and basically I just needed him to check no trigger out of his triple drive, which he didn't. So we blocked this card with 1 card, we blocked this card with 1 card, we blocked this card with 1 card, and that makes it our turn again. So basically, we use Thavis' skill to rest and kill his grade 2. Then we use Thanasis to rest Theodorus. Theodorus gives plus 10k here. Light Penguin Soldier gives plus 5 here. And then we use that last card in our hand to discard and go into Lambros. So we attack for 29, and there's no way that he would have been able to take that and survive. We do our triple drive just to check what we would have gotten, and we would have gotten a draw trigger. So basically, this turn would have been set up to attack for 29, then 37, then Vanguard attacks for 30, restanding this, it would have been 47, and then since we checked that draw trigger, it would have gone here, so then we would have attacked for 20, 47, and 32 to our opponent's Vanguard. So either way, there was no way that even if our opponent 6 damage healed, like that, our opponent was going to survive that. So that has been the FutureFight Vanguard video for the Thavis deck from V-BT11. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like the video, comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the video, and again, be sure to subscribe and check out that join button if you're interested in becoming a channel member. But with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on tomorrow's video.